For decades, we've been told that muscle health depends on powders, pills, and protein shakes, that somehow science has bottled what nature perfected. But let me tell you something, your body isn't fooled. The muscle loss that comes with aging, what we call sarcopenia, isn't just about protein deficiency, it's about metabolic dysfunction, inflammation, and the quality of what you eat. Supplements may promise quick fixes, but they can't restore what poor diet and insulin resistance destroy. Today I want to talk about a real food that your grandmother probably ate, that your doctor probably ignores, and that your muscles absolutely crave. It's not a supplement, it's not a gimmick. It's a natural powerhouse that builds lean tissue, fuels your mitochondria, and fights the very processes that break your body down. Because when you feed your metabolism right, your body does the rest naturally. For the past several decades, the nutrition industry has managed to convince the public that health comes in bottles, protein powders, amino acid blends, muscle-enhancing capsules, synthetic boosters. We've been sold the idea that laboratories can outsmart nature, that a processed isolate can do better than a whole food that humans have consumed for thousands of years. But biology doesn't work that way. The body is not a passive container waiting for isolated nutrients. It's a complex, integrated system that evolved to recognize food, not fragments. And when it comes to building muscle and preserving lean mass, this difference is not merely academic. It's the dividing line between real metabolic health and an expensive illusion. When you eat whole food, you're not just consuming protein or carbohydrates or fat. You're taking in a matrix of nutrients that functions synergistically. A whole egg, for example, doesn't just contain protein, although it contains one of the highest quality proteins available. It also contains choline, lutein, healthy fats, and a spectrum of micronutrients that support mitochondrial function, reduce inflammation, and regulate hormones, all essential for muscle maintenance. But when you isolate the protein, you lose the synergistic effect. You remove the cofactors, the biological context, the very components that make that protein usable by the body in the first place. A protein powder can deliver amino acids, but it can't deliver the metabolic intelligence of real food. This is the crux of the misconception. People assume that more protein equals more muscle. But protein is not the limiting factor. It's what your body does with the protein that matters. If your metabolism is impaired, if your mitochondria are dysfunctional, if your insulin levels are chronically elevated, then your body is already in a state of metabolic stress. Under these circumstances, protein synthesis slows, muscle breakdown accelerates, and inflammation takes the wheel. No supplement, no matter how expensive or cleverly marketed, can override that. Whole foods, however, can begin to correct it because they come equipped with the fiber, micronutrients, and biochemical signals that regulate metabolic pathways. Supplements also operate under a false assumption that nutrients act independently. They do not. Nutrients are like members of an orchestra. Protein may be the lead violin, but without the cellist, the brass section, and the conductor, the music collapses into noise. Vitamin D helps regulate muscle strength. Omega-3 fatty acids reduce inflammation and support cell membranes. Polyphenols from whole plants protect muscle tissue from oxidative damage. These interactions cannot be replicated in a scoop of powder. When you consume real food, you engage all the metabolic pathways that evolve together in harmony over millennia. When you take a supplement, you're playing a single note and hoping the rest of the orchestra shows up. There's also the issue of bioavailability, how much of a nutrient your body can actually absorb and use. Companies love to advertise high numbers, 30 grams of protein per scoop, 10,000 milligrams of this, 4x absorption, but the body is not a simple input-output machine. Just because you consume something does not mean your body metabolizes it effectively. Whole foods come packaged in a chemical structure designed by nature to maximize absorption. They trigger digestive enzymes, hormonal cascades, and metabolic checkpoints that isolate nutrients simply cannot activate. Take muscle building specifically. Muscle synthesis depends heavily on leucine, an essential amino acid. Many supplements boast about leucine content, but in real food, leucine is paired with additional amino acids and micronutrients that facilitate its uptake into muscle cells. The food creates the biochemical environment for leucine to do its job. The supplement provides leucine but no environment. It's like sending a worker to a job site without tools, without light, without support staff. Yes, the worker is present, but the job doesn't get done. There's also a behavioral layer that's often ignored. When people depend on supplements, they feel licensed to maintain poor eating habits. They think the shake will compensate for the processed snacks and sugary meals. It doesn't. Muscle is not built on shortcuts. It is built on metabolic health. And metabolic health is built on real food. Food that supports gut bacteria, stabilizes hormones, reduces inflammation, and feeds your cells what they actually need. Supplements don't fix habits. Whole foods do. So when you hear the phrase "forget supplements," it's not a dismissal of science, it's a return to science. The real science of human physiology, not the marketing science of the supplement aisle. Nature is not outdated, it's not slow, it's not inferior. It's precise, efficient, and exquisitely optimized for human biology. And when it comes to muscle health, nothing manufactured in a factory can replicate what nature has already perfected. Most people believe muscle loss happens because they simply aren't getting enough protein, and the supplement industry has made billions reinforcing that myth. But muscle loss, true muscle loss, the kind that steals strength as we age, is not a protein problem. It's a metabolic one. If losing muscle were just about not eating enough protein, then every scoop of whey powder would instantly reverse the decline. But that's not what we see. Instead, despite record-high protein intake and endless supplement use, rates of sarcopenia continue to rise, which tells us something important. We're looking in the wrong place. Muscle is metabolically expensive tissue. It requires energy to maintain, repair, and grow. The body will happily hold on to muscle if it has the metabolic capacity to do so. But when the metabolism becomes impaired, when inflammation rises, when insulin levels stay chronically high, when mitochondria no longer function efficiently, the body is forced to make choices. And muscle is one of the first things it sacrifices. Not because the body dislikes muscle, but because a dysfunctional metabolism simply cannot afford to support it. It's like trying to run a high-performance engine on watered-down fuel. The system downsizes to survive. Insulin resistance is one of the biggest drivers of muscle loss, yet it's rarely mentioned in mainstream conversations about muscle health. When insulin levels stay elevated, often due to diets high in sugar and ultra-processed foods, the body shifts into fat storage mode rather than muscle building mode. High insulin means the signal for muscle protein synthesis becomes blunted. Your muscles stop responding to the very protein you're giving them. In other words, it's not that you're not eating protein, it's that your body has lost the ability to use it. On top of that, chronic inflammation acts like a slow, corrosive drip. Every inflammatory molecule circulating through your bloodstream contributes to muscle breakdown. The immune system begins to behave as if the body is under constant low-grade attack, diverting resources away from muscle maintenance and toward crisis management. When inflammation rises, muscle protein synthesis, the process that repairs and builds muscle, drops. It doesn't matter if you're swallowing 50 grams of protein at a time. If your metabolic environment is hostile, muscles simply cannot grow. Then there's mitochondrial dysfunction, the silent killer of vitality. Mitochondria are your cell's energy factories, and muscle cells are packed with them. When mitochondria falter, as they do with age, poor diet, and metabolic disease, energy production plummets. Without adequate energy, muscles weaken. They shrink. They fatigue more quickly. And once mitochondrial decline sets in, supplements become even less effective because the machinery needed to use those nutrients has broken down. Muscle loss becomes not a matter of intake, but a matter of cellular capability. It becomes clear that sarcopenia isn't a simple nutritional deficiency. It's a systemic failure, the outcome of a metabolism poisoned by modern food, modern lifestyle, and modern misinformation. Ultra-processed foods, for instance, flood the body with inflammatory oils, refined carbohydrates, and additives that disrupt gut bacteria and interfere with nutrient absorption. Even if you increase your protein intake, these foods sabotage the hormonal and metabolic signals that tell your muscles what to do with that protein. You can't build a strong house on a weak foundation. This is why real food matters. Whole foods lower inflammation, they stabilize insulin, they feed your mitochondria the micronutrients they need to revive energy production. Real food creates the internal environment in which muscle can thrive. And the irony is that many of the natural foods that support metabolic health are the same foods that support muscle synthesis directly. Foods rich in omega-3s, antioxidants, and bioavailable proteins. The kind of foods humans evolved eating long before protein shakes existed. So the real root cause of muscle loss isn't insufficient protein. It's metabolic dysfunction slowing your body's ability to repair itself. Fix the metabolism, and the muscle returns. Ignore the metabolism, and all the protein powders in the world won't make a difference. Muscle is not built by supplements, it's built by metabolic health. And metabolic health is built day by real food and real habits, not laboratory inventions. The misconception that muscle comes only from tubs of powder or scientifically engineered supplements has become so ingrained that people forget the obvious: humans built muscle long before the supplement industry existed. The strongest, most resilient populations in history never had access to isolated whey protein or amino acid blends. What they did have were whole foods, nutrient-dense, metabolically supportive foods that triggered muscle growth naturally, efficiently, and sustainably. Yet today, we've dismissed these foods as old-fashioned or too simple, preferring the illusion of a quick fix over the hard science of how the body actually works. Natural foods that support muscle health don't just pack protein, they deliver the full biological package necessary for muscle synthesis. The key players are those that are rich in essential amino acids, especially leucine, while also offering healthy fats, antioxidants, and micronutrients that reduce inflammation and support mitochondrial function. Think eggs, fatty fish, fermented dairy, legumes, and even certain nuts and seeds. Each of these foods provides far more than just raw building blocks. They provide instructions, cofactors, and metabolic support systems that supplements simply cannot replicate. Take eggs. They are perhaps the most complete natural muscle-building food on the planet. Not only do they provide the highest quality protein known to science, but they also contain choline, vitamin D, omega-3 fats in pasture-raised varieties, and a host of micronutrients involved in muscle contraction, nerve signaling, and cellular repair. Eggs offer structural protein and the metabolic lubrication required to put that protein to work. Meanwhile, egg yolks, often demonized for decades, contain the very nutrients your mitochondria need to generate energy. You can't build muscle without energy, and you can't generate energy without mitochondria that are well fed. Supplements bypass this subtlety entirely. Then there's fatty fish, salmon, sardines, mackerel. These foods combine complete protein with long-chain omega-3 fatty acids, which have been shown in multiple clinical studies to reduce inflammation and increase the sensitivity of muscle cells to amino acids. Omega-3s act like a biochemical amplifier, enhancing the muscle's ability to convert protein into functional tissue. A scoop of protein powder cannot reduce inflammation. It cannot restore cell membrane integrity. It cannot tune your metabolism. Real food can. Fermented dairy products like Greek yogurt or kefir offer another natural advantage. They provide high-quality protein paired with probiotics that support gut health. And gut health is not a side topic, it's central to muscle health. A compromised gut increases inflammation, interferes with nutrient absorption, and disrupts hormone balance, all of which contribute to muscle breakdown. Fermented dairy feeds your muscles by feeding your microbiome. Again, no supplement can do that. Even plant-based foods get overlooked in the muscle-building conversation. Lentils, chickpeas, quinoa, and soy products offer a combination of protein, fiber, and polyphenols that support both metabolic and muscular health. While plant proteins may lack certain amino acids, when consumed as part of a diverse diet, they provide not just protein, but the anti-inflammatory compounds that protect muscle from oxidative stress. Polyphenols in particular act as metabolic guardians, supporting the mitochondria that make muscle growth possible. If protein is the bricks, polyphenols are the scaffolding that makes construction safe and stable. Natural foods excel not just because of their nutrient density, but because of their biological context. Every whole food contains compounds that interact with your digestive system, liver, muscles, and mitochondria in ways scientists are still uncovering. When you eat salmon, you get the protein and the omega-3s. When you eat eggs, you get protein plus choline and healthy fats. When you eat yogurt, you get protein plus probiotics. Supplements offer the headline nutrient without the supporting cast. They might give you the actor, but they forget the director, the crew, and the lighting. And without those, the performance fails. Consider also the endocrine impact of whole foods. To build muscle, you need insulin sensitivity, balanced cortisol levels, and proper hormonal signaling. Natural foods, especially minimally processed, nutrient-rich foods, support these pathways. Omega-3s improve insulin sensitivity. Fermented foods lower cortisol. Antioxidants regulate inflammation. Protein powders do none of these things. They don't fix the environment your muscles operate in. And muscles cannot grow in a metabolically hostile environment. So when we say natural foods build muscle, we're not appealing to tradition or nostalgia. We're appealing to physiology. Whole foods support muscle growth because they support the entire system: metabolism, immunity, hormones, and cellular energy production. They are not muscle-building foods by accident. They are muscle-building foods by design, shaped by millions of years of evolution to nourish human tissues in balanced, integrated ways. Supplements may play a small role for convenience, but they will never match the power of natural foods that build muscle naturally, holistically, and sustainably. Nature has already created everything your muscles need. The only question is whether you're willing to trust the biology rather than the marketing. We've been conditioned to believe that nutrition is a numbers game: more grams, more milligrams, more scoops, more servings. The entire supplement industry thrives on this illusion that if you simply increase the quantity of a nutrient, the body will respond by building more muscle, burning more fat, or recovering more quickly. But the body is not an inert tank you can fill with isolated chemicals. It's a dynamic, adaptive, deeply interconnected system that depends far more on quality than quantity. And when it comes to muscle building, the difference between nutrient density and nutrient quantity is the difference between thriving and merely surviving. Most supplements operate on reductionism, the idea that you can take one active ingredient, isolate it, and expect it to behave in the body the same way it does in nature. But the body is not fooled by this trick. A high number on a label doesn't guarantee anything if the nutrient is poorly absorbed, improperly balanced, or delivered without the cofactors required for your body to actually use it. This is why we see people consuming massive amounts of protein, yet still unable to maintain muscle. They are drowning in quantity but starving for quality. Take amino acids. You can consume 40 grams of protein in a shake, but if the mitochondria in your muscle cells can't generate enough energy to fuel protein synthesis, those amino acids will be oxidized for energy or excreted. The body will prioritize survival over muscle building every single time. That means unless the nutrient density of your diet supports cellular energy production through B vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, omega-3s, and phytonutrients, your protein intake becomes little more than expensive urine. Nutrient-dense foods, on the other hand, don't just supply protein, they supply the entire metabolic context necessary to use it. When you eat salmon, you're not only getting high-quality protein, but also omega-3s, that reduce inflammation and improve insulin sensitivity, two conditions required for optimal muscle synthesis. When you eat eggs, you're getting leucine, yes, but you're also getting choline, iron, selenium, and healthy fats that feed your brain, your hormones, and your mitochondria. A protein powder can brag about its grams, but it cannot replicate that biochemical synergy. This is why whole foods outperform supplements consistently in studies, not because they provide more, but because they provide better. Broccoli doesn't contain a massive amount of calcium, but the calcium in broccoli is highly bioavailable and accompanied by vitamin K, magnesium, fiber, and phytonutrients that support absorption and metabolism. Similarly, leafy greens don't need to contain huge amounts of antioxidants to have a powerful effect. Their phytochemicals activate antioxidant pathways in your body rather than merely supplying antioxidant molecules. Whole foods work with the body, not against it. Muscle is particularly sensitive to this distinction. Muscle protein synthesis requires more than protein. It requires a stable metabolic environment. High-quality nutrients reduce inflammation, support hormonal balance, regulate blood sugar, and protect the mitochondria that drive muscle contraction and repair. All of these are prerequisites for muscle growth. You can't build a skyscraper on a cracked foundation, yet many people attempt exactly that. They shovel in more protein or more supplements without addressing the metabolic environment needed to put those nutrients to use. Quantity also fails to account for nutrient interference. Excessive isolated nutrients can compete with each other, causing imbalances that disrupt absorption. Large doses of calcium can block magnesium. Too much zinc can reduce copper. High protein without adequate antioxidants can increase oxidative stress. This is why supplements often create more problems than they solve. Nature never delivers nutrients in isolation because isolation is unnatural. Nutrients are meant to work in teams, not alone. Nutrient-dense foods deliver balanced nutrition effortlessly. They provide not only what you need, but also what you need to use what you need. That's the crucial difference. The body doesn't care if you consume 50 grams of synthetic protein if it lacks the micronutrients required for muscle repair. But give it real food with balanced nutrients, even if it contains less protein on paper, and the body will use every molecule efficiently and intelligently. This is why people who shift from processed supplement-heavy diets to whole foods often see improvements in muscle tone, strength, and energy without increasing protein at all. Their bodies simply become more efficient. Muscle growth becomes a byproduct of metabolic health, not raw protein intake. So nutrient density isn't a health slogan. It's a biological law. The human body evolved eating foods that were rich in vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and essential fats, not refined powders, stripped of everything except a single isolated nutrient. When the body is nourished with dense, real food, muscle becomes easier to build and maintain because the entire metabolic orchestra is finally playing in harmony. Quantity shouts, but quality sings. When people talk about building muscle, the conversation usually starts and ends with protein. Eat more protein, take a shake, and your muscles will grow. That's marketing, not physiology. Muscle is not built in a vacuum. Muscle is built in a metabolic environment. And if your metabolism is compromised, if your insulin signaling is off, your mitochondria are sluggish, your inflammation is high, no amount of protein or supplements will produce lasting results. Muscle health is metabolic health. Ignore that, and you're chasing an illusion. Muscles are metabolically expensive tissue. Maintaining and repairing muscle requires energy, hormones, and signaling molecules to be working in concert. When the body senses that energy balance is threatened or that there is systemic stress, it prioritizes survival over growth. That means muscle tissue becomes expendable. Muscle breakdown accelerates while fat storage is preserved. In other words, the muscles are sacrificed to keep the organism alive under stress. This is why metabolic dysfunction is so closely tied to sarcopenia and age-related muscle loss. It's not just a coincidence, it's biology. Insulin sensitivity is at the core of this relationship. Insulin is not just a hormone for blood sugar control, it is a master regulator of nutrient distribution. When muscles are insulin sensitive, amino acids are efficiently taken up into muscle cells for repair and growth. But when insulin resistance develops, often due to diets high in sugar, refined carbs, and ultra-processed foods, the muscle's ability to use nutrients is severely impaired. Amino acids sit in the bloodstream or are diverted elsewhere. Protein powders and supplements cannot correct insulin resistance on their own. Only lifestyle, diet, and whole foods that stabilize blood sugar can restore proper signaling. Without that metabolic foundation, muscle growth is like trying to build a house on sand. Inflammation is another key factor. Chronic low-grade inflammation is a silent predator of muscle tissue. It interferes with muscle protein synthesis, increases protein breakdown, and disrupts the signaling pathways that regulate repair. Diets high in processed foods, seed oils, and added sugars exacerbate inflammation, while real foods, rich in omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, and polyphenols, actively reduce it. If you want strong muscles, you must reduce inflammation. You cannot outsource this to a pill or powder. Whole foods are medicine for your metabolism, and through that, for your muscles. Mitochondria, the energy factories of cells, are another essential piece of the puzzle. Muscle contraction, repair, and growth require energy, and mitochondria produce that energy. When mitochondria are damaged through aging, poor diet, or oxidative stress, muscles weaken, fatigue faster, and fail to recover efficiently. Nutrient-dense foods feed mitochondria with the cofactors they need, from B vitamins to magnesium to coenzyme Q10. Supplements often provide one isolated nutrient at high doses, but they cannot replicate the metabolic synergy of a balanced, whole food diet. Muscle thrives when mitochondria thrive. Muscle suffers when they fail. Hormonal balance is equally critical. Muscle growth depends on an array of hormones: testosterone, growth hormone, insulin-like growth factor, and even thyroid hormones. Metabolic dysfunction disrupts these hormones. Chronic high insulin, cortisol dysregulation from stress, or deficiencies in essential fats and micronutrients all impair hormonal signaling. Whole foods, combined with proper sleep, stress management, and physical activity, help restore hormonal equilibrium. Supplements cannot recreate this complex hormonal symphony. Even amino acids, the building blocks of protein, require a metabolic context to be effective. Leucine, often touted as the muscle amino acid, cannot trigger protein synthesis in isolation if inflammation is high, insulin signaling is impaired, or mitochondrial energy is insufficient. It's not enough to deliver the nutrient, the body must be capable of using it. That capability comes only from robust metabolic health. This is why interventions that focus solely on protein intake or supplementation often fail in the long term. They ignore the fact that muscle is a reflection of the body's overall metabolic state. Conversely, interventions that restore metabolic health through nutrient-dense foods, reduced sugar intake, improved insulin sensitivity, inflammation control, mitochondrial support, and hormonal balance naturally support muscle preservation and growth. Muscle is a marker of metabolic vitality, not an isolated target. When we look at aging populations or individuals recovering from illness, the difference is clear. Those who maintain strong muscles are the ones with intact metabolic health. They eat real foods, manage stress, stay active, and avoid processed, inflammatory diets. Muscle is not built in a lab. It is nurtured in a living, functioning system. If the system is compromised, muscle cannot survive, regardless of the amount of protein or supplement consumed. In the end, metabolic health is the soil, and muscle is the plant. You cannot grow a lush, strong garden in depleted, poisoned soil. You cannot build muscle in a metabolically unhealthy body. Metabolism is the foundation. Metabolism is the context. Metabolism is the key. Muscle is simply the visible proof of a body that is functioning the way it was designed to. Feed the metabolism and the muscles will follow naturally. Ignore it and all the shakes and powders in the world will be wasted effort.